now going to look at the composition of functions. This is another type of function operation. And what this is actually whenever we see something like f with an open circle g of x. Now, in a previous video, we saw something that looked like f with a closed circle g of x. If you see the closed circle, that means multiplication. And so that means to take f of g and multiply it by, f of x, multiply it by g of x. Well, the open circle is something different. This right here represents composition. And when we're talking about composition, what we're talking about is we're going to take the second function, g of x, and we're actually going to put it inside function. So now what is happening is we're going to take f of that g of x. So notice this now becomes my x value. So I'm going to replace the x in f with the entire g function. And so you're always going to replace the x in the first function with the entire second function. So let's look at an example of this. Let's say that we have f of x being a negative x plus 9. And we have g of x equals an x squared plus 3x minus 7. So whenever I have f of g of x, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the first function, f. And I'm going to write it down, but in place of my x, I'm just going to put parentheses, because that's what I'm going to be replacing. I'm going to replace my x in my f. So you start writing down your first function, this function. And then this O right here means leave an open place for all your x's. And in those x's, we're going to put this item right here. So I'm going to plug in that g of x for that other x that was right here. And then I can simplify. So I can distribute that negative, and I would get negative x squared minus 3x plus 7 plus 9. So that would become a negative x squared minus 3x plus 16. So this right here is f of g of x. Now if this had a number in it, I would plug that number in for my x's. What if instead it actually said g of f of x? Okay, so that's saying to start with my g, and in place of my x, I'm going to plug in f of x. So I'm going to start by writing down my g, but I'm going to leave open places for both of my x's. Everywhere there's an x, I'm going to leave an open place. And in those open places, I'm going to put my my f function. So everywhere I had an x here, I plugged this entire equation into it. Now I would multiply it out. So I would have a negative x plus 9 times a negative x plus 9 plus a 2 times a negative x plus 9 minus 7. And I'm going to leave myself a little bit of space. Negative x times negative x. Negative times negative would give me positive. So that would give me x squared. Negative x times a positive 9 would give me a negative 9x. 9 times a negative x would give me a negative 9x. Positive 9 times positive 9 would give me a positive 81. 2 times a negative x will give me a negative 2x. 2 times a positive 9 would give me a positive 18 minus 7. And then I combine like terms. So I have an x squared, negative 9 and negative 9, x would give me a negative 18. And then I have a minus 2x. So I actually have a negative 20x. I have a positive 81 and a negative 7. So that would give me a positive 74 there. So g of f of x would be an x squared minus 20x plus 74. So notice how different these are. But notice that I start with my first one, x squared plus 2x minus 7. And in place of those x's, kind of notice that I start writing out my first one, but in place of my x's I put parentheses so that I can plug in that second one in place of those parentheses. Now, if I have one that has a number, and it really doesn't matter if I have f of f of, let's say, negative 2. I'm going to start writing my f, which is a negative x plus 9. And in here, I'm going to do a negative x plus 9. Okay. And then in place of my x, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to replace it with a negative 2. So notice I started writing my f function here. Negative x plus 9. In place of my x, I wrote the f function again, because that's what's second. Then I replace the whatever x's I have with this number. And then I start solving. So the opposite of negative 2 is 2 plus 9. So 9 plus 2 is 11. Notice I'm still carrying down this negative sign out here. So negative 11 plus 9 would give me a negative 2. So f of negative 2 happens to be a negative 2. So you can put the same function inside of itself, just like this. You can put different functions inside of another function, like we did previously. This is called composition of functions when you have the open circle here. It is not multiplication. Please make sure you pay attention to closed circle versus the open circle. Okay? Try some of these and then let me know if you have questions.